Hello everyone, Miss Carrie here, and today we're going to talk about populations and samples, and within that we're going to talk about surveys, random samples, and biased samples, and the difference between some of these types of samples. Okay, so first we're going to talk about populations. Okay, so a population and a sample go together. The population is the bigger group of people, and the sample is the smaller little nugget that you took out of your population for your survey. Okay, and on our vocabulary slip here, it talks about butterflies, and that the butterflies that are in the meadow, all those butterflies are the population. And then, well, you can't survey all of those butterflies, so you decide how many you're going to survey, and on here it says 100, and you just survey those 100 and take the characteristics or the color or whatever of that 100. And so that 100 is your sample. Okay, so the population is the whole amount, and the sample are the ones you picked out to get information on. So here I have a visual of that I took off the internet. So the population is every one of them. This would be like all of CMS students, which is about 640, I think, somewhere in there. All of CMS students would be the population. And then you decided to do a survey of the whole school, but you only surveyed a small group of them from that population. And that's what you call getting an inference, which we'll talk about another time. But you use that small sample for making inferences about the larger group. So you have your population, which is your large group, and the sample, which is the small group out from that population. So here we have where we're going to determine if it's a population or a sample. And so on our first set, here at the top, the students in a science class and the students in a school. So one of those is the population and one of those is the sample. And so the students in the school is the population. So I'm just going to abbreviate with a P. So again, that would be like all of Clark Middle School would be your population. And then the students in a science class would be the sample. So if you had all the students in the school and then you just had Mr. Sampson's science class or Miss Walter's science class, that would be your little sample. Then we have all the sneakers in the store and 5 pairs of yellow sneakers in the store. So all the sneakers in the store would be your population. So you walk into Shoe Carnival and they have all of these sneakers in the store. That's the population of how many sneakers they have. But you just pick out the 5 yellow pair. That's the sample. Okay? The few amongst all the many. Then you have the files on a computer and the music files on a computer. So the files on the computer would be the population. All the files on the computer, and we know we can really load up files on a computer, right? Between video and music and Word and spreadsheet and pictures and just all kinds of stuff. So the music files then would be the sample space, the small group of everything that is on the computer. So that's the difference between the population and the sample, and so that you know how to identify the difference between those. The survey Pretty basic here when we talk about survey. Just want to point out that there are different types of surveys, different ways to survey, and normally you just survey that sample. You don't survey your whole population when you're talking about a lot of them, because that can take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and so you just pull out that small group, that representative sample that you want to actually survey. So we have the sample from our population, and that sample can either be not random or random. And on our example here, it's obviously talking about fishing, and it says, noted the species of fish caught by tourists over a 3-day period, or caught and released 30 fish from a different section of the lake. So you can see that here this is not random because they targeted tourists, okay? And over here this is random because they just did 30 fish from all over the lake, okay? So that would be like the random, non-random versus random sample would be you want to survey your homeroom, and random would be that you survey everyone. Non-random would be you only survey those who are wearing red that day, or you only survey the boys or only the girls, or only those who are wearing flip-flops. Okay, so non-random means that you picked a section that made it where it's not equally likely that everyone could be chosen. Okay, so random means everyone has that same chance of being chosen. Random again. So more specifically on random samples, here on our vocabulary slip it talks about putting all the names into a hat. So if you put all the names from your homeroom into a hat and you pull out one name, everybody has the same chance of being selected. Okay, so that would be a random sample. Okay. All right, so let's look at some examples of random sample versus not random sample. So on our first one, it says you survey 20 students in your grade to determine what the middle school's favorite food item is at lunch. So this example is not random because, first of all, you're only surveying your grade, okay? And if you want to determine what the middle school's favorite lunch item is, you can't determine that by only surveying your own grade, okay? So that would be why this is a non-random sample. Number 2, you survey every 10th student in every grade as they enter the cafeteria to determine what the middle school's favorite food item is at lunch. This one is random. You're surveying every grade, so every grade is represented, and when you survey every 10th student, that signifies that you're not gearing in on certain students to ask. So just every 10th student that enters, that's who you ask. On number 3, you survey 20 people at GameStop about what their favorite gaming system is. This would be random. GameStop would be a good place to go to ask this question because that's where you're going to find the gamers. And so if you just ask 20 different people, that makes it be random. Number 4, you survey your group of online gaming friends to see what their favorite gaming system is. Now this would not be random because when you do your online gaming, you're all on the same system. And so if you survey your friends and you're all on PS4, well then they're going to probably say they prefer PS4. Or if they're all on Xbox, they're going to say they all prefer Xbox. So it would not be a random survey. Okay, so some tips when you have to explain, because a lot of times when it's not enough to just say, oh, it's random or it's not random, you have to put some words behind that to say why. So when it's a random sample, you have to say why each person had an equal chance. You know, like the one we just did with the gaming system, the asking people at GameStop was random because you weren't singling in on specific users, the ones who use certain types of gaming systems. You would say it's not random because I only asked my friends. Okay, so that's why it would not be random. So a lot of times, again, you have to put words behind. It's random because every 10th person was asked out of the total population. Or it's not random because I only asked a specific group of people. Okay? Okay, then we have biased and unbiased samples. And a sample is unbiased when it represents the whole population and it's done at random. Okay? That's what has to happen for it to be biased, unbiased. And then biased samples means that you didn't do it at random. You asked a specific group. You were looking for specific answers on it. You wanted it to go your way. Okay, so you gathered the data in a way that didn't represent the whole group. So that would be an unbiased sample. Kind of goes along with the random and not random. Okay. All right, so on this one, we're going to look at an example here, talk about what we think of our options. It says, for example, let's pretend you're conducting a survey about whether or not skateboarding should be allowed in public areas. Who should you ask? So, should you ask the senior citizens in your community center? Should you ask parents only? Should you ask skateboarders only? Should you ask residents of the community who pay taxes? So let's talk about our options here. So you're talking about skateboarding versus senior citizens. Do senior citizens skateboard? Probably not, right? So that wouldn't be a good group to survey about skateboarding in public areas. What about the parents? Well, you probably get a mixed result, but do parents normally skateboard? There's probably some who do, but skateboarders are usually younger people, right? So asking skateboarders only, well, they're probably going to want to skateboard wherever they can skateboard. So I don't know that that's necessarily a good group to ask either, because they're going to probably say, yeah, I should be able to skateboard in public areas, right? Residents of the community who pay taxes. So this one is probably your best choice among these four, but I can see where this one might have, some limitations on it also, because who do you mean as far as pay taxes? People who pay property taxes, or people who are just consumers and buy things in the community, and so of course you're paying taxes there. But so this one might be a little tricky also. But of these four, this one's probably your best one that is unbiased, because you'll get a wide variety of people who are answering your question. Okay, so of these four, D would probably be your best guess, best choice. All right, so let's look at some examples here and determine whether or not these are biased or unbiased. So number one, you want to know the number of students in your math class who do their homework right after school. You survey the first 12 students who arrive in the classroom. So this would be unbiased, okay? Because when you take your sample, you're getting the first 12 students who arrive. Okay? So there's no knowing which 12 you're going to get, so that would be an unbiased sample. Number 2, you want to estimate the number of students in your school who want a football stadium to be built. You survey the first 20 students who attend a Saturday night football game. Okay, so this sample is biased because you're looking at building a football stadium, and who did you ask? Only people at a football game, right? So of course they're going to want a new stadium, or most likely anyway. Who wouldn't, right? So this survey would be very biased. You would want to change that to where you don't just survey people at a football game, okay? Then on the last one, it says, Mr. Sampson wants to know how the residents of his town feel about a ban on testing. Whoops, I think that's a typo. It should be texting. Texting while driving. Okay, sorry about that. Texting while driving. He surveys 300 residents at random. Okay, so this survey would be unbiased because he's surveying 300 residents at random. Okay, so that would be an unbiased survey. All right. Okay, so again, some tips on helping you determine whether a sample is biased or not. It's unbiased if it was selected at random. It's unbiased if it reflects the whole population, okay, not just a small group, okay? It's biased when it's the opposite. It's biased when you didn't select it at random. You went to a certain location that favored your outcome, okay? It doesn't represent the whole population. So when you make those statements, when you have to explain, you're going to say the sample is representative of the population because, and you go back to that situation and say, because the 300 residents were selected at random, okay? Or the sample is not representative of the population because they only asked people at the football game, okay? So that's how you would word those things, okay? All right, so that's all I have for population and samples. I hope that helps you have a better understanding and be able to get your work done. So have a great day, everybody.